Get me set up. All right. This is embarrassing. I had the Twitch thing up and running, so I actually heard myself talk. So I'm gonna go ahead and not do that. All right. So starting over. Hey everyone, my name is Jamie, and I'm a developer advocate for a serverless cloud platform called Nimbella. Now, in this introduction, this is called Intro to Serverless: Demystifying the Cloud. So what I'm hoping to do in this presentation is show you that no matter what type of skill set you are with whatever programming language you use, you have the capability to take code and launch it to the cloud. So before we go ahead and start and explaining everything, I'll go ahead and kind of introduce myself. So my name is Jamie, and I'm pretty active on Twitter. So if you want to follow me, I am Jamie Dawson Code on twitter.com. I'm also a self-taught developer. I've been programming on my own for a couple of years now, and I've been in the industry for about a little over a year now, coming on 2. Also, as you can imagine, like I do specialize in like serverless technology because that is one of my passions, but I'm also really into the React framework. I personally love coding in it, but I'm pretty interested in like pretty much any language I'll jump into, and if needed for the job, because my job requires me to jump around a whole bunch of different languages. And I'm also what I am is I'm a developer advocate for Nimbella. So for those of you that don't know what a developer advocate is, it is basically a mixture of a software developer who is also a teacher who interacts with developers on a one-on-one. So I make sure that this could be anything from like building little demo apps or building like blogs and resources to help developers understand how to use our platform. And on a personal note, when I'm not doing programming stuff, I'm an anime nerd, and you're going to see that a lot throughout this presentation. And if I'm not watching an over-the-top anime, then I'm most likely watching an over-the-top horror movie, which really happy that, speaking of which, super happy it's October. And lastly, also for those of you that happen to know what noise music is, I'm also a huge noise music enthusiast. So if you enjoy any of those 3 things, definitely hit me up on Twitter because I most likely want to be your friend. Okay, so quick introduction about like what Nimbella is and like what we're going to be doing. So Nimbella is a serverless cloud platform. So what we do is that we provide integrated tools and services right out of the box for everything that you'll need to start like building serverless functions or serverless applications. We also, something that's really neat is that we provide the ability to build stateful applications natively. You do not have to set up any services for that, for either setting up for building stateful apps or front end or back end. All of the services that you need to handle are dealt for you. And we also have we're also open source based with multi-cloud solution. So you don't have to deal with a vendor lock-in for a specific service. I mean, that's something more of the enterprise level. The first 2 things, I'm assuming most of you are students and people who are like doing startups. So the first 2 definitely be more for you as far as getting your app like quickly deployed to the cloud. And if you're curious, like what languages that you can use, we have like plenty of languages that are provided. JavaScript, Ruby, Go, Swift. So if you're worried about that, we most likely have like a language that's good for you to actually use. Not only that, with our cloud, we actually provide the ability, whether you're doing AI, ML, AR, VR, biotech, health tech, edutech, or e-commerce, you are able to take your application and deploy it onto our cloud. So, all right. So you're probably wondering, all right, so who is this workshop for exactly? So this workshop is for people who have little to no experience with serverless technology. Now, if we were doing this live, this would be the part where I'd ask everyone to raise their hand if they've ever actually built a hello world function in whatever programming language you prefer. And I would assume that at least like 95% of you or 90% of you would be raising your hands at this point. If you have ever built a hello world function, you have the technical capability to launch functionality to the cloud. Secondly, also this workshop is pretty much for people who might have actually have some experience with serverless technology, but are just looking for a simpler solution of getting their code on the cloud. So, having to avoid things like, setting up services to be able to, get certain things up and running, and only having to focus on your code logic what are one of the benefits of using this platform. And overall, here's what to expect for this workshop. The first thing we're going to be doing is that I'm going to be talking about some of the terminology that is in the world of serverless, because I think it's important to understand exactly the terminology before you actually start like building, because it doesn't make sense to build things unless you know exactly what it is you're building. So the first thing I'll do is I'll talk about the old way of building applications. I'll compare it to the new way with serverless technology. We'll go over serverless functions, serverless apps, stateful and stateless apps. And then once you understand the terminology, that's when we're going to jump into the workshop, which will involve us deploying serverless functions and demo apps. And then the second half will involve us actually building a serverless app from scratch. And once you're done with this hour-long session, you will have all of the knowledge that you need to start taking these skills and using them to create your own applications. So what are we going to build? Okay, so like I said, I'm an anime nerd. So I decided to build one of the most simple applications you could possibly build to deploy code to the cloud and deploy serverless functions to the cloud. This application, it has like a very basic front end, has a picture. And the way this application works is that you click on this button and it interacts with a serverless function. And when you call upon the serverless function, it returns text, and it returns this response plus ultra. And so, granted, this isn't exactly the most impressive application in the world, but the point of this workshop isn't to build the most impressive serverless app. The point of this application session is to give you the tools that you need so that you can start understanding exactly how to code with serverless technology, so that you can start doing your own thing later on with those skills. All right, so the requirements we're going to need. So if you look into the Discord chat, I'm assuming most of you are in there right now. There is a link for Nimbella.com. So you will need to make a free account on Nimbella.com. So that process itself will take 1 minute to be able to create the profile and just get all the access that you need. And you can also use you can actually log in with your create account with your GitHub account. So if you want to go through that way, there's a button to click on it to instantly create one with your GitHub account. Secondly, when you actually log in, once you create an account, you will need to download the CLI. Now, the CLI is a command that you run into your command prompt to be able to interact with your cloud. The CLI will give you the ability to deploy code to the cloud and also get the URLs that you're going to need. So those are the two basic things you'll need. It'll take about 2 minutes, so I would recommend doing that. All right, so let's talk about building apps the old way. I want to go ahead and talk about that real quick. So as a developer, building apps the old way, one of the things you're going to have to do is that you would start off with your code logic. So, and that's perfectly fine. Pretty much like all developers, get your code logic up and running. But then here come the challenges. For starters, you're going to have to write out your server logic. So that's a bunch of extra code that you're going to have to write out. Secondly, you're going to have to deal with infrastructure. So you need a place to actually store the code itself. So you're going to have to go ahead and possibly buy some actual infrastructure in one way or another. Secondly, security. How do you make sure that your application is actually secure and I can't actually, some person can't hack your server? And this is especially important if you're dealing with an application that's dealing with users' sensitive information. Nextly, server scaling. Let's say, for example, your application only has enough server space to handle 1,000 users. Well, you go to bed one night and then you wake up and you realize and you see that several thousand users tried to make an application or try to make a profile on your application. Well, you didn't have the server space for it, so it didn't work out for them. On the flip side, though, let's say you have 10,000 users worth of space for your server, but your application only has maybe 1 to 200. So what you've now done is you've spent a ton of extra money on server space that you're not even using. And of course, another issue that you're going to have to run into is that, if your application gets pretty big and you want to make sure that it's running 24/7, you're probably going to need to hire 1 or 2 people to be able to make sure that it's up and running. And assuming like maybe you're a startup or just a student, that's probably a whole bunch of, you're probably going to have to spend money on those people, and that's money that you probably don't have. And ultimately, what all of these things come down to are issues of time and money, having to deal with all of these things in a row. So here is the solution, and in my opinion, the solution is to just go to the cloud. But here's what you're going to be doing as a developer when you code to the cloud. When you go to the cloud, you write out your code logic. From there, you run one simple command in your command prompt to say, hey, take this code and send it to the cloud. The code itself will be sent to the cloud. It will be containerized. And from there, all of the infrastructure and provisioning will be handled for you, so you do not have to deal with management. The servers itself will have built-in security. And also there will be automatic scaling. So if your application needs 10,000 users or 100,000 users worth of server space, it will scale for you. And if you have 10,000 users, but thousands of users decide to delete their accounts, then the server will scale according to that as well. So that is something you do not have to worry about. Once the cloud handles all of those headaches for you, you will receive a secure domain. You can take that domain and you can put it into your browser. And from there, you can see your application hosted, and you can share that secure domain with anyone, and anyone on the internet can see your application. And that is pretty much just how simple it is to actually deploy code to the cloud. Oh, by the way, real quick, before I move on to the next thing, I just wanted to make a quick announcement that if there are people asking questions, I promise to answer all the questions in the Discord chat by when the session is over. And also, if there are people asking questions on the Twitch chat, I actually have someone right now gathering those questions and putting them in the Discord chat for me. So I'll be sure to answer them regardless of where you post. So yeah, anyway, with that aside, let's go ahead and talk about serverless functions. So as I stated before, yeah, if you've ever built a hello world function, you have the capability to launch code to the cloud. So let me show you how. So here, this right here is an example of a serverless function. It is a hello world function written in Node.js. And what this is that it is a, as you see right here, we pretty much have no server logic at all. We're not hosting anywhere. Literally, you just write the code logic itself, and you deploy it, and you're good to go. But to explain how a serverless function works, the best way I can describe it, something happens. Because something happened, run the code. The code gets ran, return a response. And that's pretty much just how simple serverless functions are. In this example, let's say you had a button that called upon the serverless function. So you say, hey, I clicked the button, a click a button event happened. Run the serverless function itself. You see that, hey, I want you to return the message hello world. And then the response you get from the event that happened is hello world. And to even show you just how simple it is to actually what the process will be like, I can even show you what it's like to experience sharing serverless functions with other people. So the first thing you do, step 1, write the function. Step 2, share the URL. And I'm going to post this URL in the Discord chat. And if you run that URL, you will see that you will get this response. So this right here, this URL, this is connected to the serverless function itself. It's telling it to return JSON, and it actually it returns body with a hello stranger. So that's how simple it is to create functionality and deploy it. All right. So now that you understand kind of the basics of serverless functions, let's talk about stateful and stateful apps, or stateful and stateless apps. What are the differences between the two? Because it's important you understand these two, because these terms in the world of serverless are very important. So a stateless app. A stateless app is an application that does not store the session state. A good example of that would be just like a static website that doesn't take in any kind of input or anything. You know, you just sort of, maybe you can scroll through different pages and take a look at like pre-made content, but overall, like you cannot really manipulate the state. And even if you could, if you refresh the page, whatever you manipulated goes away. A stateful application. A good example of that would actually be Discord. Discord itself is a stateful application because you are able to store the session state. Every single time you make a post inside of a Discord board or whatever, whatever they're called, what you're doing, what's happening is that like, okay, this user manipulated the state of this message. So what happens is that they see, okay, I got this message from this user, I'm going to store it. And if I refresh the page, like if you turn Discord off and on, that message will still be there. And the same thing goes for Instagram. That's the name of the website, Instagram. So if you were to go onto Instagram and you upload a photo of yourself, well, it doesn't matter if you close the application, turn it back on. That photo will still be there because the state of the application has been stored. And you're probably thinking, okay, well, that's cool and all, but what does that got to do with serverless? You see, here's the problem with serverless. You see, serverless functions are not forever running. A serverless function runs when you call it, because that's how it is simply. That's the way it works. You only like use the serverless function when you need to. So because serverless functions are not constantly running, you cannot be able to store state like natively like that. But in order to actually make an application that is serverless stateful, you typically have to set up services in order to be able to keep track of things like that. I'm happy to say, like, with Nimbella, we actually have that option. So when you create a template with Nimbella, you actually have you can actually call upon the built-in key value storage, which is called Redis. Now, the process itself is pretty straightforward. Let's say hypothetically you had an application that it takes in a name, and then it will store the name in the database. And if you refresh the page, it shows all the names that were stored that were submitted by users. So the first thing I would do is that I would make a accept name action. And then what that would do is that it would see every time it adds a name, it adds a key value of user 1, stores the first name. It got ran again, make it key value 2, store the second name, and so on and so forth. And then secondly, I would make another function that gets called every time the application gets fired up or refreshed. And what that function would do is that it would go into the key value storage and scan through all the names, and then it would just display them one at a time from beginning to end. And because you've created those two simple functions, you have created a stateful application that keeps track of when users submit their names and when they get displayed. So that is one thing that you can do with the platform itself. Okay, so now that you know the terms, let's go ahead and get started. All right. Sorry about that. All right. Perfect. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Nimbella.com. So on Nimbella.com, what you're going to want to do is, the link itself should be in the Discord chat itself. So on Nimbella.com, you're going to go to the top right, and you'll see a section where it says login. If you've not already made an account and gotten the CLI, I would recommend you go ahead and start doing it now, assuming you want to start deploying code to the cloud. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to Nimbella.com, click that, and you'll see an option that allows you to set everything up to make an account. And we'll go ahead and get this out of the way. That way you can just get everything like up and running. So it's going on in the background while we're handling other stuff. So once you're on Nimbella.com, you should see something like this, this right here you'll not have this. You'll probably have a, hey, I'm trying to configure your auth login. This key right here is what you'll use to actually log into your section of the cloud so that you can start deploying to your namespace. Once you've gone ahead, once this gets finalized, which should take about 60 seconds, you would just go ahead and click on the Nimbella CLI tab right here. From here, you're going to see 3 options. So we have a CLI for Mac, Linux, and Windows. Now, I would recommend go ahead and click on the one that's appropriate for whatever system that you're using. I personally use Windows, so I would just go ahead and click on that, and I get the CLI up and running. And this usually takes about a minute or 2 to be able to get it fully up, but once that's done, your computer will be set up to be able to deploy code to the cloud. All right. So the next thing we're going to do, let's go ahead and actually get started working with serverless functions in the cloud itself. To do that, click on the Nimbella workbench. So the Nimbella workbench is an online UI that you can use to actually interact with your serverless functions. And from here, we can start building serverless functions and start interacting with them and editing them. So to do that, just click on this link right here, and you'll be directed to the workbench where we can go ahead and get started. It usually takes a second to start up. All right, I'm zoomed in so it can see pretty well. So there's a handful of options you can click on to get you started. So the first thing I would recommend doing is clicking on Quick Start. So what this will do is that it'll give you a nice little idea of what exactly it is that you can do with serverless functions themselves. So there are 2 main things right here. You got the new action name, which will help you create serverless functions. And then you have the edit action name, will let you to edit those functions you created. Another thing you can do is if you want to see exactly what actions or serverless functions you have, you can just click here or type in action list in the search bar right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click it. And as you'll see, I have a ton of different serverless functions. These are all the serverless functions I have for this chat app where I can delete users, delete messages. I can see who the admin is, calculate things. I have a lot of different serverless functions that do different things. And you're probably not seeing anything right here because you've not created a serverless function, but we're going to go ahead and change that. To create a serverless function, you need to type in new, we'll give it a name. Let's call it hack. Why not? So what that'll do is that it will create a serverless function called hack. And so what that'll do is sorry, I lost my train of thought. So what that'll do is that it will create a basic boilerplate. Now, it doesn't really matter what you call it. You can call it hack, you can call it hello world, call it whatever you want. It will create this exact same functionality. And from here, it just returns a serverless. Let's see. So right now, this code right here is not deployed. So if you want to deploy it, just go ahead and click this button right here. And so what that'll do is that will send your code to the cloud so you can start editing it. And as you see, this is just hello world function right here. It takes in an argument. It either has it'll either take in a hello name, or if there's no name provided into the argument, it will say a hello stranger. And if I want to run it, I just type in hack. Give me 1 sec. You can click on hack right there. Okay, so just type in nim action get hack. So that will pull it up, but let's say you want to get the URL to actually test it. Type in nim action get hack --URL. Let me explain what this command is doing so that you are able to recreate it. What you're saying is take Nimbella. I want to use the CLI to get an action. So get me the action called hack, and then give me the URL. So what you can do is you can take this URL, copy it, paste it, and you will see that it runs hello stranger. And now if you want to go ahead and test, actually test out arguments for it, you would just go to the URL itself, type in question mark, name equals Jamie, or whatever name you want to put in, and it will return hello Jamie. And that is how simple it is to create serverless functions. So now something real quick I want to show you before we move on. This is just something that you can experiment with. Computer's going a little slow right now. Sorry about that. You notice at the very top, I scrolled up and I clicked playground. So let's say hypothetically you want to experiment with serverless functions, but you don't want to clutter up your namespace. What you could do is that you can click on the playground, and the best part about the playground is that you don't need to make an account on Nimbella.com. You can actually just pull up this playground with no account at all and start experimenting with code. And this will actually, and you can use this to kind of come up with new functionality and experiment with what kind of output you get. Like for example, I'm passing in the name Nimbella. I click run, and then it will return hello Nimbella. Of course, I can just change that to Jamie. Run it, and I can publish it. Click on the publish button, and I would get a URL, and I can test it out in my browser. So that's just something real quick I wanted to show you as far as not cluttering up your namespace with functionality that may or may not work. Okay. The last thing I want to show you before we go ahead and move on, because pretty soon we're about to start the workshop where we're building an application from scratch. But before we do that, it's important to understand how to deploy an entire serverless function, or sorry, an entire serverless app. To do that, you would click on the Deploy Starter projects from GitHub. Now, the majority of these projects are stateful apps. To start deploying these applications, you just have to run one simple command, which will take the code that is currently on GitHub and deploy them to your namespace. So I want to go ahead and launch the page visit counter. So to do that, click on this button right here, which will copy the command. And we paste it into your command prompt. Now, I'm going to talk about exactly what's going on when you run this command. What you're doing is you're telling the CLI or NIM, hey, Nimbella, I want you to deploy an entire project. And normally right here, what you would do is that you have two options. You can deploy from GitHub, which is what we're doing right now. We're saying, hey, this is in GitHub, so go to the profile called Nimbella, and inside the folder for demo projects, deploy the visits application. If you had an application that was on your local machine, then you would just give it the folder path right here. Like if it was on your desktop or whatever, you would just whatever desktop / project name, something like that. Now, two things get displayed here. We have the two serverless functions that are associated with the application. We have the counter application, the counter function, which counts how many people have visited the application itself. And then we have an info, which keeps track of exactly when the application was first launched. So those are two stateful applications that are instantly come available. But the thing is, you also deployed a front end inside the web folder. So what that does is that it provides you a namespace to be able to interact with it. So to do that, to interact with it, copy this right here, paste it into the browser, and you will see that I've had 34 visitors visit my application since this time period. And just like that, you have now deployed a stateful application to the cloud. And see if I can find it. All right. Okay, so now you've seen all the commands to create serverless functions and how to create deploy serverless apps. Let's go ahead and start creating a serverless app from scratch. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to go pull up your command prompt, and we're going to type in the command nim project create. We need to give it a name, so I'll give it the name Hack All Might. Why not? You can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it Hack All Might because I know for a fact that like there's no other project on my desktop that has that name. So what we're going to do here is we're going to cd into Hack All Might, and we're going to see what's inside the folder. So you're going to get two folders right here inside of your template that you're generating, because that's what nim project create does. It says, okay, I want to create a template to make code from scratch. From here, you're going to see two folders. You'll see the web folder, which is completely empty, and that is where you're going to put your front end stuff, such as your HTML, CSS, like the JavaScript, whatever it is, you're making your website look pretty. And then secondly, you're going to have your packages folder. So your packages folder is where you're going to put your serverless functions. And what you'll do is that you will you'll be able to get URLs that are inside of here and then call upon them in the web folder itself. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my web, whatever like code editor that I'm using. Don't save. All right, so we got that, we got that. So before we begin dealing with the front end, let's just go ahead and actually make sure that our serverless functionality works. So I want to build a serverless function that returns the text plus ultra. That's all I want to do. So I'm going to say plus ultra function.js. That's simple, and go into the hello world, and I can just copy this and bring it on over. Paste it here. And plus ultra. So I'm going to turn greeting to just say plus ultra, doesn't matter. Turn that. Just remove all of that stuff. All right, and I could even remove the arguments because, like, you know, we're not even like taking in any arguments itself. Okay, so now we got our serverless function. Let's deploy it. So go to the command prompt, type in nim project deploy, call it Hack All Might. What that's now done is that has now deployed my serverless function to the cloud. Let's go ahead and get that URL that we're going to be needing. So I'll cd into packages, default. So nim action get. I want to get plus ultra function minus URL. All right, so I type it in right. So that gave me a URL. I can test it to make sure that actually works. And it returns plus ultra. Awesome. So I'm going to save that right there because I'm going to need that serverless function later. Okay, so just to go ahead and make life a little bit easier, I went ahead and made a boilerplate for the front-end web itself. So here's some code I got for the front end. That way, because the thing is, like, I wanted this session to be more focused on like actual serverless functionality. I didn't really want this to turn into a HTML course, so I just decided to write the HTML for you, and I also threw down like a little bit of jQuery as well, just to make it simple. So I will go ahead and post that link in the chat. So if you want the code itself to be able to copy and paste this code, just go ahead and go there and be able to start copying and pasting. So once you're inside this link, just click on web. You'll see you have two files. You got the index.html and the styles. So let's just create those. HTML. And I need to create a styles. So we'll do styles.css. So click on the styles. This is an incredibly basic, as you see, incredibly basic CSS. It's literally just a wallpaper that I found that I liked, and I decided to use it in the project itself. So to do that, just paste that in here. And so you've now made your styles. Go into web, index.html. So I'm going to go, so I can actually zoom in. I want to explain this code real quick of what's going on before we go through. So this is a basic HTML file. It brings in jQuery. It's calling on the style sheets. And we have a jQuery command that says, okay, when a button is clicked, I want you to extract JSON information. And as you see right here, this JSON information is blank. And the reason it is blank is because you're going to need to use use the skills you've now gotten to get the URL that you have created once you pushed your code to the cloud or push your functions to the cloud. And then from here, it's just like a basic body. We have like an H1 for go beyond. We have the image of All Might. We have the button for click me, which is which you can interact with when you go right here. And then we have the ID All Might text. So what that'll do is that when the button is clicked, it'll see like, okay, I need to add whatever this is, this text.body to that. So that's pretty much the overall self of the code. Pretty straightforward HTML with a little bit of JavaScript and jQuery. So go ahead and paste it. Go into index.html and paste it. All right. So we've now saved all the code. Let's go ahead and deploy this code to the cloud. So nim. So go to your command prompt, type in nim project deploy, and then give it the folder path, which is hack all might. And as you see, like unlike last time when that folder was empty, we didn't get anything right there. But now, because you actually provided a front end, we get this URL. All right, paste that in here. And you'll see that like we get our applications now on the cloud. And if I try to say click me, as you see, nothing happens. The reason being is because we have not added our serverless functionality. So to do that, we need to get that URL that we got. So in case you didn't save it or whatever, just go into hack all might packages default, type, sorry, my computer's acting stupid. So type in nim action get, and then it is +_ultra_function -- URL. So that gets you the URL that you'll need. Gonna copy right here. Now you see in the get JSON right here, this is where you're gonna paste that. So you'll paste that, but keep in mind, the URL is not complete because we are returning JSON, because I don't want it to return like the actual JSON, like with all the brackets and all that. I want it to return the text in the JSON. So to do that, at the very end of the URL, just type in .json. And that will return that. And so we're going to save that code. And now we can deploy it one more time. So that'll go through. All right, you've deployed a front end and you also got your actions deployed. So let's just refresh this page. Does the function work? Yes, it does. So at this point, we are almost like coming to an end for this presentation, but to pretty much wrap up everything that you've done, you have learned all of the terminology the basic terminology you'll need to understand, like, what serverless is. You've built serverless functions. You have now taken a front end and built all the functionality and deployed it to the cloud. And you did all of this just by code logic alone. You didn't have to set up any services. And yeah, that's pretty much it. That pretty much concludes the entirety of the intro to serverless. Let me go ahead and get my slides up and running here because I got a few more things I want to say. All right. So lastly, before I go ahead and close this and I go into the Discord channel and answer any questions, I do want to say that I just want to say thank you to everyone who not only jumped in and was coding along with me and participated in this event. I also want to thank all the staff and everyone else who is like keeping HackNC up and running. I've hosted conferences like this before, and imagine doing a 3-day one. That is not easy at all. So I have a lot of respect for you guys of what you're doing. Other than that, I want to say thank you so much for everyone who's been a part of this. I will be providing links in the chat itself right now, because what I'm going to be doing, I'll be providing a lot of different things. For one, I will be providing a link that will allow you to get the pro version of our serverless platform for free for 3 months. The free tier is pretty good, but if you want to build bigger applications or want more functionality, then I would strongly recommend signing up for the free tier. I will also be providing a link to our Slack channel, which provides 24/7 support for developers who are interested in building applications to the cloud. And not only that, but as a developer advocate, there is one thing I want to announce for developers who are working on projects. So right now, one of the things I want to announce is that I am currently collecting a handful of users to work with them one-on-one to assist them in building their applications. I'm hoping my goal is to have 4 to 5 developers projects by the end of this year. And what I want to do is I want to go ahead and take the projects they build and highlight them on our official website. So if you are building an application and you want to simplify it by going to the cloud, you can go ahead and contact me on Twitter or on our community Slack channel, and we can go ahead and discuss that. But other than that, I will be posting the links inside the chat before I wrap it up. Once again, thank you to everyone, and I hope you enjoy the rest of HackNC.